Welcome everyone to the Success Elevated podcast. As always, I'm your host Hayden Lee, and I am joined this week by you're not even a guest anymore. You're just co-host, returning host, whatever you want to call it. Katie Harris, founding partner here at Spot On Solutions. Katie, thanks for joining us on the show today.
You bet. Happy to be here. I'm always a little nervous about how you're going to actually introduce me. I'm like, ooh, I don't know.
My last intro was really good.
It was really good.
It was like just woman business owner extraordinary. I don't know what I said. It was a really good intro.
I don't know. I liked it.
It was awesome. Okay. Well, we're going to dive in today and talk about one of our favorite. Am I off on that? One of our favorite topics?
Do you know what? It's just been over the course of the last 12 years, the place I've gravitated to and something I've become really passionate about as our business has grown.
Training and hiring new employees. Those are two big concerns for just about every business owner out there in the world. In fact, it should be a concern. If it's not a concern, it should be.
Or you're very, very lucky.
Or you're very, very lucky that people are just somehow walking in your door that are perfect candidates. But it's something that we've focused a lot on here at Spot On Solutions. And we feel like there are some things that we could maybe share with our audience that could maybe help them navigate some of the pain points as they go forward. Because that's the biggest thing I think that most people face when they talk about training and hiring is it's so stressful. And it's so hard to deal with, and trying to just get the right candidate in the right seat in your business is just hard. It's hard to do.
Well, I think there's a lot of things in business that you don't want to do wrong.
Yep.
Right? And hiring and training are one of them because it's expensive to do those things wrong, and it holds things up. And so it's also, I think, part of what makes it really hard and stressful is it's, as an entrepreneur, it's not what we naturally do. Like, I didn't start my business so that I could go hire and train people. That was not why I started my business, right?
Nope.
Like, I started my business because I liked selling and I liked doing digital marketing and I liked working with clients. So the things I was kind of naturally really passionate about and interested in, like, that's not, hiring and training weren't those things.
Yep.
And yet, as your business grows, you find that, okay, really to reach the goals I want, somebody has to hire and train.
Yeah. Well, and it goes back to the common phrase, and I've got to go back and listen to the podcast and find one of our guests recently said.
I think it was Brett Gilliland with the Lead Entrepreneurs.
It might have been Brett. Somebody said, you've got to stop working in your business and work on your business.
Sure, and you hear that all the time, but how do you do that?
How do you do it? And it's challenging, right? And like you said, the things that got you into like digital marketing was because you loved digital marketing and you loved talking with clients and stuff. And it's hard for you to want to be like, well, now I have to like go hire and like train and like deal with the stress and the headache of that. And it's like, yeah, you have to. If you want your business to grow, you have to.
So you have two choices, right? You hire somebody to go do that for you. And you're not going to do that day one because day one you're trying to make payroll. You're trying to keep the lights on. Like you're doing it all. And you know what? Sometimes that goes for a year. Sometimes that goes for 3 years, how long that period is. But when you hit this point in your business growth where you're like, wait a minute, like, what are we doing here? Who's in charge of hiring and training? And for us, what that looked like was like, we felt we were bumping up on something. Like, we got to hire, and we just kind of had a crappy approach to it. Just like, find somebody, offer them a job, bring them in, right? But I remember Google was visiting our offices pre-COVID. So Google would come into our offices and train with us every quarter. And I remember they were sitting in our office and they looked at us and they said, you guys got to get in your own lanes, right? We had hit a point in our business where we had several employees and a lot of things happening, and we were all still kind of doing everything. And he's like, you got to get in your lanes. Like, you need somebody in sales, you need somebody in fulfillment, and you need somebody in people, in hiring and training. You guys got to decide who's going where. And I remember the room was kind of crickets. Like, okay, well, and in my head, I'm thinking, I'm like, well, I want to do sales. Well, I want to do fulfillment. Well, I want to do hiring. Like, because we all kind of like all of those places.
Right.
And so we started having a conversation amongst ourselves, like, who's going to do what? And I remember this rep from Google that was there. He was awesome. And we worked with him quite a bit. He knew us pretty well. And he's like, I can tell you right now what lane you should all three be in. Like, I know what your strengths are. And after that, we thought about it. And we're like, oh yeah, we do too, right? I know. It was like, Katie, you're hiring in people. And from that point on, when I was like, okay, this is my focus in growing this business, then it really became a passion. And I think it's been a journey along the way to learn how to do that and for that passion to kind of get fueled. But I think for entrepreneurs that we're talking to and that we work with all the time, the thing that's tricky is if you don't have the time to do that, like it became a real kind of luxury when it was like, okay, this is what I have to do, and I can actually put focus on that.
Right.
That's a little bit of a luxury that as we're kind of building into that, we don't necessarily have. And so how do you bring somebody in to help with it or hire somebody for that position, or what does that look like?
Yeah, it's it's kind of a dorky analogy, but the chicken or the egg, right? Like you've got to have enough success that you can hire, but in a lot of times to get that success, you've got to hire some people.
I know.
So for you guys, I mean, it seemed like you'd kind of built some success. You were able to hire, but
this is what hiring looked like.
Literally, was there a threshold? Yeah, I don't know.
Well, this is what it looked like for a long time. I was like, oh my gosh, like we need help. We need somebody to do this. And I know this person, right? And I just like Annie Davies, who works for us, she's awesome. Like I remember I went to church with her one day and I was like, you should come work for us. Like that's how that happened. It was like, you're just like hand picking people.
Yeah.
And then you hit a place where it's like, okay, this needs to be more structured.
Of course. Well, and I think that mindset goes into the conversations that we've had recently about your mindset for hiring, right? Like you'd kind of changed it over the years, but I feel like going back to when you were originally starting here with like the Annie story, right? You're always hiring. Like that's the big key that I think a lot of people miss out on. And it's a luxury for sure that like your business has to be in a spot that you can say that, but like you almost have to be in a way where your business is, in order for your business to grow, you have to be always willing to hire.
Well, okay, so there's this super big myth that like, oh, we just need more sales and you can only focus on that, right? There's 3 things that are always happening in a business. You either need more sales, you need more people, or you need more training.
Yeah.
It's never like, oh, you know what? We got enough people, we got enough sales, we got enough training. You're never at that place. Because if you're trying to aggressively grow a business, one of those 3 things always needs your attention. As soon as you do one, as soon as you get more sales, guess what? You need more people. As soon as you get more people, you need more training. As soon as you have more training, you've got more sales. Like it's just constantly going like this, and it doesn't stop. And so I think the number one thing to do is like take a minute and figure out what is our hiring plan. Yeah. And that's going to have different phases to it. Like I remember our hiring plan for a while was like, we need 2 people in the next 6 months. What does that look like, right? Now we've progressed to where we have an always hiring strategy that's going on right now. That is not a feasible strategy in year 1 at all, right?
Not at all.
But because of market conditions right now and because of growth, like we have an always hiring strategy, and what that looks like is a very specific process for interviewing, for recruiting, for interviewing, for onboarding clients.
And I think having the always hiring mindset allows you to be really picky too.
Yes.
Because it allows you to be able to pick really awesome candidates. You don't have to, we have to hire right now. We've gotten to a point where we've gotten big enough or something's happened. We have to hire right now. So we've got to just, whoever walks in the door, we've got to hire them.
So the downside to an always hiring, quite frankly, is sometimes you're overstaffed.
Yeah, totally.
Sometimes you're just overstaffed and you got people that aren't busy and you don't want to create bad habits. Mm-hmm. So you've got to figure out what are we going to do when we're overstaffed. But I'll tell you, I'll take overstaffed over understaffed.
100%. I mean, it's I feel like it's a necessary evil in order to grow in a certain sense, right? And yeah, again, it allows you the always hiring thing. I just keep going back. We've hired some awesome people here over the last 6 to 12 months.
So what do you do? Here's the trick, right? What do you do when there's just nobody to hire? And I think that's what the marketplace has looked like post-COVID.
Yeah.
Post-COVID, the marketplace looks like, oh, great, I will hire, right? I'll have an always hiring strategy going, but there's nobody to hire. Like I just need a butt in the seat.
Yeah. That's a challenge that we talked a little bit about it with Justin Weilander.
Yeah, great at hiring.
Yeah, Justin Sifford from Weilander. Obviously that's like the majority of what they do. And he says, the big thing, if I remember correctly from his podcast, the big thing for him when it comes to this hiring and the challenges faced since COVID is, you have to really follow up with people. there's a lot of no-shows when it comes to interviews. People are interviewing at so many jobs. So many people are trying to hire right now. That you really just have to follow up and stay top of mind to people. I think you have to streamline your hiring process. I know from personal experience that I don't want to have to go back for my 5th, 6th, 7th interview in order to land a job.
Okay, so talk to me about this.
Okay.
This is interesting. I'm super curious to pick your brain a little bit. Like, you went through our whole hiring process, and you had a lot of other options.
Yep.
What was it about the process? If you're looking at it from a candidate's eyes, right? How do employers appeal to you? Appeal to candidates?
Yeah. Honestly, one of the biggest things that appealed to me, and obviously that changes as you grow.
I guess I'm a little bit terrified of your answer.
No.
I don't know what it is.
Don't be terrified. The process for us has probably changed slightly because now we have an HR director that can kind of help out with some of those things. So it's probably changed slightly. But when I was hired, probably the biggest thing that led me to want to be with you guys was just how easy the process was. There was no, like I mentioned, there was no 5, 6, 7 interviews in order for me to just land this position.
There was also more than one.
No, there was definitely more than one. That was intentional. Yeah, 100%. And you have to have more than one. I think having one interview, unless maybe you have a relationship or know that person or have worked with them before, you have to probably have more than one interview.
And probably depending on the position too.
Also true.
There are some positions. I think tech positions a lot of the times. We work with a lot of companies that are hiring a lot of techs. That can be a one interview job.
I seriously. Very true. I seriously applied at several positions that wanted to go through like 5 or 6 interviews. I had to meet with this supervisor and then this director, and then I had to meet with several people before I could even meet with the person that was going to decide whether or not I was going to be hired. And so extremely frustrating. And so it was a breath of fresh air to, I reached out to somebody that I knew here at the company. I sat down with them for a 15-minute conversation. They said, I think you'd be an awesome fit here. Let me schedule a meeting with our CEO. We sat down. I sat down with them and you, and we had another 30, 45-minute conversation. And within a week, I had a job offer. Like, it was a very, very quick process. And if I hadn't had a job offer, I'm sure I would have had some kind of notice from you or the other person I contacted saying, hey, this isn't going to fit. Like, that for me was so awesome to just have a quick, smooth, easy conversation. Hey, we want you here, or hey, maybe this isn't a great fit for you. Let's talk about something else down the road. I think that is a huge piece that a lot of people miss out on is they don't follow up with people they're trying to hire, and they drag out the hiring process. The hiring process should not take 5, 6 months. It just shouldn't. Like, it should not take that long.
Here's what I found about talent. The most talented people probably already have a job.
Yeah, 100%. And so if you drag that process out, I'm not going to sit around and not work for 6 months. I'm going to go get a job.
And that's a very, if you're recruiting somebody that's already working, right? It's a very uncomfortable place to be where you're going to work, but you're actively looking. And so I think you got to be mindful of that. You got to go after talent that's already working.
Yep.
But that hiring process looks a little bit different for somebody in that situation. And also some people, they're going after a job. They can't go 2-3 months without employment. That means they're going to take something. And so it does have to be pretty fast paced. With that said, you got to hire slow enough that you hire smart. Yeah.
So. And I think and again, it goes back to the always hiring thing. I think you can be real picky if it's a quick process, right? You can, if you have, a couple interviews or, a phone screening, however your process however you want to make that work. If you're always hiring and have that attitude, you can be picky. And I think it's just common courtesy that is missed out on. I think the other part
is, and I mean, I'm going to say this with the caveat is, you have enough people, right? Not that we just got to have people in the room. Right. But if you have enough people and you're being picky, it also forces your team to elevate a little bit because now I've got another option, which is...
You've got a bench.
I got a bench.
Yeah.
And so if I got people on the boat, right, on the team that aren't performing... They got somebody right behind them that's
ready to go.
That's going. Everybody's got to rise a little bit. Or I have more options now. My options are I can let somebody go.
Yeah.
Because I've got somebody else ready to fill in. And it's hard when you're in a situation where you have somebody who's maybe even toxic on your team, but you can't let them go because you got to have the body. Yeah. Right? That's a hard position to be in. And as owners, we are in that position a lot where it's like, I wish they weren't here, but maybe they're better than nobody.
Right. And that's again goes back to like why the bench is so important, because guess what? You don't have to tolerate a toxic person in your work environment if you have a bench.
Right.
Because then you can be like, hey, like you've got to shape up with how you're working with the team or how you're working with clients or customers, or, so-and-so is going to come off the bench and take your spot. Yeah. Like, frankly.
So can I talk to you a little bit about what that process looked like along the
way? Of course.
Because, man, it doesn't feel like it was that long ago when I was like, a bench was a dream, right?
Yeah.
There wasn't cash flow to fund a bench or a training program to feels like a little bit of a dream. So it was a process to get to where we are. And it looked a little bit like this. Originally, we're just like hiring people as we need them, which if you're hiring people as you need them, you're probably hiring too late. You're probably hiring a little too late because you don't have any training time kind of gapped in there. And you're probably maybe not always making the best decisions, but that's what it looked like in the beginning. And then training was like jump in the deep end and figure it out. Right. And that was hard. Like we have employees, we have team members that are still here today that'll tell you like, I'll tell you how I learned. Like, I just figured it out.
Yeah. 100%.
And that's hard. Right. And so that's what it looked like initially. And that's okay. Like it can be messy. You can figure it out. I didn't know how to hire. I didn't know how to train. It was messy. And we just made do, and that's okay. And then it looked like, okay, now we're in our lanes, right? Katie has a little bit more time to focus on what a hiring system looks like, what a training program might maybe entail.
Right.
And it starts to make a little bit more sense, have a little bit more strategy to it. And then we get to a place where it's like, hey, I don't have time to just do this all the time. It takes a lot of time to recruit and screen and interview and all the different pieces that go into that. But we can't go get a full-time HR person, right? That's an expensive role to fill. And luckily we have a client, Kenyon Martin, who introduced us. He's like, hey, I've got this guy who is a contractor. He's an HR contractor, and he's coming out and he's working with our team like 1 day a week. Are you guys interested? And that's how that conversation started. And so we brought in an HR consultant, and he's in here 2 days a week. And handles a lot of that and then is available as we need him. So for us, that was a really great fit. It gives us a third-party person that people can go to for HR, which has been immensely valuable in the whole process with our team. Frees up a little bit more time, right? And the next level that we'll go to is we'll have a full-time HR director in-house. But for us, where we're at right now, like that role makes a lot of sense. So, if you're looking at it, I don't know how to hire, I don't know how to train, I would surround yourself with people that have already done it. They'll give you tips and tricks. Let it be a little bit messy, right? Figure out what it looks like, and then start to put together a little bit of a plan. Okay, what are my interview questions that I ask every single time? Do I do a phone screening and then a sit-down interview, right? Do I do an offer letter? Like, just have some simple processes, and you can build from there.
Love it. Well, I think you've kind of transitioned to a perfect spot where we can talk a little bit more about the second piece today, which is the training portion. Our HR director, who's a contractor, our consultant, his name's Shane Campbell. Shane, we had a meeting as a team a couple of weeks ago as we were prepping for the new hires that were coming in. And Shane said, because we were talking about training, Shane said the most common reason that an employee leaves, burns out within the first year, is because they weren't properly trained.
Right.
And so training is a piece to this that I think a ton. I mean, I've worked at places that there's not a training program. There's zero training offered.
I've had that. I've
had
that company before.
Yeah,
right?
100%.
Yeah.
And the if you can find the diamonds in the rough that just stick with your company and stick through the tough times, that's awesome.
Yeah. But
you're going to be able to hold on to more employees if you have a proper training program in place. And that, Shane kind of really reemphasized that. And we have an awesome training program now. He just was emphasizing it for our team in that meeting. But like the training program is a piece that people just miss. And they, I think an excuse, and we use it to an extent here, I think, because there's only so much you can learn from a training. You have to kind of dive in and learn how to do stuff. And that's definitely a piece of it. But I think a lot of people use that as a crutch to say, oh, well, the only way to learn how to how to dry out drywall is just doing it. And it's like, I get that to an extent, but there
is actually a way to do it.
There is some training that probably should be involved. And so like, talk a little bit about how the training program has evolved over the years and why you feel like it's had to evolve.
So really, you know, you got sales, you're selling, you're hiring. But the training piece of it, that thing's always rolling.
Yeah,
because
never
you've
stops.
either got new employee training, new service training, new safety training. We call it elevation training, where people that have been here, you know, even people that have been here 8, 9, 10 years, it's like, okay, what training do you need so you're still feeling fulfilled, so you're still feeling like you're learning and you're growing, stuff like that. So that training piece, it's massive, right? And number one thing you need is like somebody who at least has a portion of their day or their week that can put some brain power to that.
Yep.
Because it doesn't just happen. It has to have, if it's you, great, right? If it's somebody on your team, great. If you need to go hire a consultant, do it.
Yep.
But find a way to have 3 hours a week that you can just say, okay, what do we need to train on? What might that look like? I think that that's key, right? And understanding anything that you find everybody's always asking a question about, that's something you can train on, right? Yeah. The other thing that I think happens a lot is we're like, why are they screwing this up every time? Or why can't they do this the way I want them to do it? We fail a lot of times to express like expectations and be like, hey, here's how you do it, right? Here's the checklist. Here's the plan. I've been surprised at how often something that's maybe just really easy for me or for you, you know, because we do it all the time.
Yep.
Somebody else is like, I don't even know where to start with that. And honestly, like here's a takeaway is hopefully like, if you're like, I got to train on something, right? Just make a checklist. Like if you're like, I don't have time to go make a whole big training, I don't have time for all this, man, just sit down and make a checklist. These are the steps you've got to complete. These are the steps you got to complete. Give somebody a checklist. And I found that to be super empowering. So empowering. And I would argue, I think there's an even bigger lesson that I think it can be learned here. And again, I don't own a business, so, you know, take this for what it's worth, Katie, and tell me if I'm wrong here. You do a really good job of this, and I think a lot of business owners miss out on it. If somebody is struggling, if you have an employee that's struggling, maybe, is just not getting this particular task down, I would argue that instead of looking at the employee, we need to look internally as leaders. Always. And be like, okay, obviously I didn't train this person well enough. And I think that's a toxic thing. I think a lot of people are like, oh no, I've got to fire this employee because they just can't get it. And it's like, well, but have you properly trained them? Now, if you've properly trained them, you've given them the task list, you've given them a checklist to go through it, and they're still not, then, you know, maybe that's a larger problem. But we need to look internally more than. So for me, I have a really hard time. Like we talked about building a bench, right? Yep. So you have enough people that you can always scale if you need to, but also so you can like weed out people that aren't great fits, right? 100%. Well, I have a really hard time letting people go until I'm 100% sure I've done everything I can do, right? So a lot of times before I'll have that conversation, I have to be able to say, have I given them all the training? Have I explicitly said, are they in the right role? What I need to do? Are they in the right role? Are they doing what I'm directly, I have to be really confident that I've given all the resources possible. Now, been very specific, here's the upside, right? Because it sucks to fire people bad. But here's the upside, is if you're really confident that you've done the training, that's an easy decision. It's an easy decision. Yeah, it's going to make your life easier if instead of looking externally, oh, the employee, they're just bad. They just can't, they just don't know how to do this. It's like, okay, well, maybe we should look internally a little bit more. Yeah. See if we need to offer some more training, some more resources. And if we've done all that, if we feel like they're in the correct role for them, or we've moved them, shifted them to a new role, if they're still struggling, then that decision becomes very, very easy. It becomes very easy, and it becomes super liberating because it's like, hey, you know what? I know I did everything. Everything I can do, I'll let you go. Yeah. And hopefully I have a bench, right? If not, that's fine. I'll do better next time with my next hire. And I hope people aren't listening and being like, yeah, you make that. It's hard. Like I think it's very hard. It's super hard. But once you dive in and start doing it a little bit, it really has become something I'm really passionate about. Because on the flip side of the training them and them not getting it and you got to let them go, on the flip side of that, what happens more often than not is you see somebody like, people don't want to show up and fail.
No, they don't.
Right? They don't like, oh, I'm going to go take this new job and I hope I suck at it. Like that's not,
Yeah.
they're not thinking that. They don't
No.
want to show up and be bad at something. And so
Nope.
the flip side is if you have the opportunity, if you have the privilege of sitting in a role where you get to hire and train people, like that's a pretty cool place to be because you're literally making people's lives better, right? Be the type of boss that they like to come to work. They're supporting their families.
Yep.
They're finding some own personal growth and development. Like that's super fulfilling. So the negative side, which we just spent the majority of this podcast talking about, which I didn't mean to, but it's so
not at
real.
all. Not at all.
It's so real. All that hard stuff, we do all that hard stuff because when you look at employees that stay with you 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years, right? And you see people that started off making minimum wage that are now, supporting a family and just super fulfilled and proud of who they are. Like that's one of the coolest things you can do as an entrepreneur.
Yeah. See somebody grow like that is it's awesome. Honestly, just to kind of, speak to your point a little bit, just from personal experience, it was one of the reasons I stuck around here at Spot On Solutions was within my first 3 or 4 months, there was an employee that had been here a little bit longer than me that was struggling. And instead of Katie saying, see you later, you were like, hey, maybe we just need to get them in a different role. And it empowered me to be like, hey, if I ever get to a point where I'm struggling in this particular role or I'm struggling to work with clients or whatever's going on, I know that Katie's going to have my back and be like, and the Spot On Solutions as a whole is going to have my back and be like, hey, maybe we just need to get you in a different spot, get you in another seat on the bus, right? Everybody uses that analogy. And that was empowering for me as an employee. And it's been, cool to kind of see as I've grown that like, hey, if I ever struggle or mess up or maybe find that this particular spot is not great for me, that doesn't mean I'm going to be out on the street. It means that I'm going to maybe find another spot here that I'm going to do a better job at. And it's going to be, it's going to make things all that much better.
Well, here's the thing, is first of all, you've got to find a way, whether you're that person or you have somebody, to just have the time to be able to recognize that. Because we really get so busy running our business, working in our business, doing all the things that we got to do to chase our goals and hit our goals and do all this stuff that sometimes we miss it, right? Yeah. If you don't have a person or you're not setting aside time in your day to actually see what's happening with your team, you'll miss it. Yeah. I've missed it before, and I feel really bad when that happens because I'm like, man, if I had just
spent a little bit of time,
but I just asked some better questions, if I had just spent a little bit of time, like I think that we could have fixed that, right? And so it feels like a little bit of a weight as an owner, on the one hand, to go find the talent, hire the talent, train the talent, right? And then it feels like a little bit of a weight, like, am I doing enough? Because it's hard to feel like you're really doing enough to build your team. But when you start to see things clicking and working, right? When you hand somebody a checklist and all of a sudden their performance improves, you're like, let's go.
Sweet. It's awesome. Go. I love it. I want to kind of, let's we're going to do a little exercise here at the end, Katie. I don't want to keep you too much longer, but I would like to kind of see if we can summarize as best we can, give our audience a few points that they can take from the podcast and be like, okay, here's what I'm going to do going forward to do better at hiring and training. Okay. So the one thing that I thought of for training, I think that you said that I think is perfect. I think one point that people should take from this, carve out 3 hours of your week to focus on training your employees. And maybe that's you. Maybe that's you that's got to do it. But I can, if it's not you, I can guarantee you can find an employee at your company that could take 3 hours of their week to go focus on training. I guarantee there's somebody at your company that...
Or find a coach or a consultant.
The 3 hours a week, have it devoted to training. I can guarantee that you're going to be able to find some time to do that. And if you really focus on doing that, it's going to elevate your team that much more. So I think that's a good point for training. I love that you said that. What are some real simple points for maybe the hiring? I think a consultant's great for hiring as well. Getting someone like Shane in the room that can help you build a hiring program or cheat sheet. What do you think would be some other good points for that?
Decide what your process looks like.
Yeah.
So, and don't deviate from it.
Yeah.
I'll tell you the times we've made really bad hires, we've deviated from our process.
Yeah.
Or we break the rules a little bit. We skip a piece of it.
Oh, we didn't need a phone interview for these guys or whatever. Yeah.
So if you don't have one right now, I'll tell you a real basic one is you get applications in, you do a phone screen. That should be really quick. And if the phone screen is not great, stop wasting your time.
Yeah.
Toss it, right? If phone screen's okay, then the next one is you come in for an interview. That interview is going to probably be with the HR consultant or the HR person or a member of your team that
manager
you
of some
designate
kind.
for it, right? And then a final hire has a couple more people in it. Usually has me or Michael or Derek or somebody like that.
An owner,
An owner or an operations manager, somebody that's in that role. Now you got enough people on the team with enough opinions that if you're missing something, you're going to see something. But put those 3 pieces into it. Call and extend an offer personally. I don't like extending an offer via email or text or something. Call and personally extend that offer. I like to call and extend offers personally. I can come through an HR guy or somebody else, but if it's a key role, show them that you care enough.
I think it speaks to have the owner or the CEO, whoever be the one that offers it. Yeah. I think that's awesome.
So I think that's a big piece of it. And then you know what? Then HR can send out your official offer letter.
They got to sign that
by the end
or whatever.
of the day, you're going to have an official offer letter, and then it looks like that. Then you can let your administration team kind of kick up and fill in the pieces from there. But do those few things so that you know who's coming in and they know you and they're a little bit bought in before they walk through the door.
I love it. I think that's awesome. And honestly, so we talk, 3 hours a week for training. That whole process you described between a phone screening, a couple of interviews, and another phone call with an offer shouldn't take, again, much more than a couple hours, right? Like, so that's my I guess whole takeaway from this conversation today is like, it's not going to require a ton of your time. It should require some, but it shouldn't require a ton of your time. I think the biggest thing is just having a process, sticking to it, and carving out a piece of your schedule to devote to this. Because at the end of the day, hiring and training is how you grow your team.
Well, and like if we just circle back to the very beginning, right? Like it wasn't why I got into business, so it required a whole lot of learning on my part.
Yeah,
and that a lot of times has meant reaching out to people that are much better at it, like Justin and Christy Siffer at Wyland, or people that do it all the time. Because I've had to go learn some skills, and so I think as owners, as managers, we're going to have to learn some new skills to slide into this role and even know what should I do, what do I need to learn, and the cool thing about people and hiring and training is, man, you're never going to run out of things you can learn for that. And so it's awesome. So much fun.
Love it, Katie. Thanks for sitting down and chatting with me about this. This has been fun. I think it's been cool to be a little introspective and look at Spot On Solutions and things you've done and things we've done to try and grow our team. And I'm excited for the future.
And don't we have a cool team?
We have an awesome team. We have the best
fun.
team. And I think there's going to be some good value for people that listen to this, especially in the industries that we serve. I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned that can help those industries.
Just, take a couple minutes and give yourself permission to make it important enough to focus on. And don't expect everything to be perfect overnight. It's a messy process, but the rewards are definitely worth it.
Love it. Thanks, Katie.
Thanks, Hayden.
This has been Success Elevated, making you a little bit better one show at a time. Thanks for joining us. Please subscribe on YouTube or any other major podcast platform to listen to more episodes. We are proudly brought to you by Spot On Solutions. If you'd like to learn more about how we can help you grow your business, please check us out at spotonsolutions.com.